Good evening and welcome to another community forum. I am your host Byron Campbell and of course our co-host Chris Diali. Good evening, Chris. You give the greetings to the viewers tonight, Chris.
Good evening, listeners and viewers on the various platforms that you may be joining us on. Today I was pleasantly surprised. Someone who watches our program every week says she has a friend that watches the program from Canada, obviously on YouTube or one of those things. And they thoroughly enjoy it. So we're glad to be coming to you again on another Wednesday to give you our thoughts and to provoke, interest in some of the topics that we're talking. Welcome.
Chris, so we have an interesting night. We have a lot to talk about. Let me start with agriculture, Chris. You know, there was Farmers Appreciation Day. It was held around the island. Some farmers were awarded, were recognized, and so I endorsed this initiative, because I think it's high time that we show up the farmers, that we recognize them for who they are, what they're doing, their role in food security and nutrition. And it's a very difficult function there. Someone once said to me, you may see a lawyer once in 5 years or your dentist, okay, but you're a farmer. You have to interface with these individuals 3 times a day, So I thought that this was an important initiative, and I want to congratulate the government for holding such an activity, providing there was dinner, it was nice, I thought, to show up the farmers in this way, Chris.
Yeah, I mean, I listened to the program and some of the things they were planning. That was just one of the many things that they had.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it is good to give the prominence and put a spotlight on the farming community and all that they go through, because farmers have a hard task to generate a living from farming in Grenada, apart from cocoa, nutmegs, and traditional bananas, which is out of the ways. It's a difficult task, and you must recognize these ladies and gentlemen in the farming community for what they do for us, as you say, for national food security and so on. And I think if the government continues in that line, it would be a good thing. Let's see what the budget holds for the farm, for agriculture, because agriculture normally take 6, sometimes 7 position in terms of allocations. And you're hearing about all these government estates that land there and they're not doing well, they're not programmed well, and you have a lot of acreage that could be planted and put into productive use. And I suspect with that comes all the issues with pests and labor and so on that we need to get.
And peridiolarceny. That's a huge one. It's a disincentive. Yeah. It continues, Chris. And particularly now, what's happening, you recognize that the hunting season is on. Started October to December, end of December. And it gives people an opportunity to go into your property, and we see farmers are experiencing loss as a result of this. But one aspect of the sector, Chris, that concerns me is the aging farmer, and how do we attract more younger persons into it. And one program I want to recognize, the 4-H program. This is you don't hear much about it, but it exists in schools, in a lot of our schools. And it introduces, it exposes young people at that tender age to farming and nutrition and other factors of the sector, And this is something I'm happy to know that is continuing. They have extensionists that are designated to work with the 4-H movement within the schools. And even though out of every 100 we get 5, still important, we need. So I want to encourage that we follow through on this very important program, 4-H.
And I think to add to that, you can't get young people sticking in farming. And I always use the analogy that the late Sir Dwight Venner gave. He says, we come to our farms in a 200,000 vehicle pickup and so on. Yeah. And we step out with our water boots, a hoe and a fork and a cutlass. Going back to 50, 60 years. So I say that to say that we have not, for young people to be there, you have to make it sexy, using that inverted commas, in the sense that, you make them see how you could get the science to interface with the drudgery work that farming has over the years been portrayed as. if you're doing nutmegs, you're bending your back until your back mash up.
Yeah.
You know, could we harvest nutmegs by using nets? Well, I mean, something.
Somebody said to me, Chris, I got you bending your back. Somebody, I read it somewhere. I think it was one of the farmers' chat on WhatsApp. And what they're saying is that, look, cocoa and nutmeg cultivation, production has a slavery kind of mentality to it, aspect to it. It's too hard, it's too laborious, you know. We had to fight, it cannot continue. But what was interesting coming out of this chat, Chris, is that, and it was echoed by a number of farmers, participants in this chat, that look, I'm not gonna be planting back this thing. I don't have the energy anymore. This is, it's not paying me sufficient. I can't live by it anymore. So that's worrisome, Chris.
Yes, and here we have cocoa, one of the highest in terms of quality in the world.
Yeah.
And then, you know, remember I told you about this program I saw in India with nutmeg trees. That two things that is important. They weren't guessing that the nutmeg trees were female and would call, and they weren't with the nutmeg trees wasn't taking 3 and 5 years to call. The nutmeg trees were giving nutmegs within a year and a half. And they were bearing at little heights, you know.
So it's a variety and the technology.
And the technology and the science behind it. And how they were harvesting the maize and everything. It was amazing what these guys were doing. So it's not that, it's rocket science. The science is there, the technology is there. Why can't we, for God's sake, use it and encourage young people? Because if a young man knew he could put on 100 nutmeg trees and within 2 years maximum, he can make money from that.
Of course. But Chris, let's go into a little more in the cocoa situation, because you know, we do a fine cocoa here. You know, it's a preferred taste. It's a cocoa that's in demand. But what's been happening to our cocoa production, I think it's important to note, in that last year, Chris, we had a drop in production. 25% drop in production. And on top of that, we had over 250 farmers less supplying cocoa to the Cocoa Association. This year, I just got the report, Chris, for this year, and we have a further drop in production of 20%. We have a further drop in production of 20%. 20% is a lot. 20%. When you add last year 25 and 20% this year, we're looking at a 45% drop, close to 50. And that's not counting the impact on beryl, which the same report indicated that some 85% of the farmers growing cocoa, they had some effect, meaning they lost trees and other. So we can anticipate another significant drop in this. And on top of that, we still had about 150 less farmers this year supplying cocoa to the GCA. So we have an issue here. To what extent we will be in a position to maintain some presence in the industry, and most importantly, supply our local chocolate producers. But the board made a statement. You know what the board said in their report? The board recognized this. They said that they're concerned about the lack of extension service. And that's a fact, not only affecting cocoa production, but other crop production. Extension is not in a good position.
I hope
and that's a fact, because the government is presently, I'm aware because I attended a session recently where a survey was done with the Extension Service, and it's the ICA and FAO project that is looking at the issues there to launch or to come out with a new strategy, a system of extension.
I know you could stick all night on agriculture.
Feeder roads, Chris, the absence of a land use policy.
And let's see what the budget is going to say.
The high cost of input. I don't know, Chris.
I don't think
I worry.
The throne speech didn't say anything much. So let's see
about
what the budget
about
is.
that, Chris. But it's cause for concern. Cause for concern, that bothers me. And still staying with agriculture. No, we don't have, and they mentioned here, a land use policy. We don't have a land use policy. So what is happening now is that in the absence of a policy, anything happens. So we see a number of things that's happening. There is a decline of available agricultural lands right now. It's on a declining basis. And even the lands that are designated agriculture are underutilized. So the question is, there was also an important project happening in the last regime. I knew it was there, a land bank initiative. That is where it was financed, I think, by FAO, a foreign concern, and there were senior people working on this to identify lands that are available, working with farmers and landholders, and creating a bank that persons who want to go into agriculture can access in a managed and controlled way. So,
I will move you along.
Chris, yes, I'm open to this, but I
about
could go.
chit-chat
But I could go
on
all
our
night.
own,
I could tell
We're
you.
going to put agriculture as one of the main things to talk about. So let's go. Move on.
Chris, yeah, I mean, we've had important development. I heard that the Caribbean Court of Justice is going to rule soon on the BICO case. You know, there was an appeal.
Yes, yeah. It's on the 22nd.
22nd. So they would be doing a release on the 22nd. A verdict then on the 22nd. So this is interesting because there's a lot of investors and local persons.
A lot of local people who lost money.
That would.
And Trinidad paid their people, Barbados paid their people, and all of us in the has got nothing.
Nothing. So it's an.
That's what is the crux of the case.
What's your projection here?
Well, it will be interesting. This is the first time a case like that is going to the CCJ.
Yeah.
Basically claiming discrimination based on nationality.
Yeah.
So let us see what comes. I mean, we're hoping that they will rule in our favor.
Yeah.
Because there are assets that can be used to pay the people in the
Yeah.
So let's see.
Teacher strike resolved. Of course, created some disruption earlier this week. Protest strike. The matter is resolved. I'm to understand they've been paid. Or will be paid, I don't know, but how do you avoid this?
Well, you know, Byron, I listen to this. This is nothing new from the point of view that if a new teacher comes into the system, it normally takes 3 months for the paperwork to get done, going through Public Service Commission and all of that. We may question now that in this day and age where we digitalize and we have things that could do, we should not be taking 3 months to process paperwork, to have teachers, temporary teachers or whatever the status to be teaching for 3 months and not getting paid. So that's one. But then when you look at what government have done, and I'm saying this because I remember a particular union person on our program had spoken about that when you do the fortnightly pay, right, and government has to process wages every fortnight now, and the accounting officers in the ministries haven't given additional resources. So you have every fortnight, if you have 1,000 teachers in the system, it had to be processed. And the next, and here we come now, the attempts that taking 3 months to get paid or more, or longer. You know, there must be some breaking point to particularly the ministries that have this additional work to do. So I think, you know, we need to get to a point where this thing could be computerized and people don't have to wait long enough. So, I mean, this is not, I hear the union, and I agree with them. We shouldn't be having something
at this stage, 2024,
stage,
you know,
it's been existing, you know, have been going on for donkey years.
Chris, we have to take a short break. Viewers, stay with us. We're going to be right back. Yeah.
Fresh fruits and vegetables should be properly washed before preparation and consumption. A message from the Grenada Food and Nutrition Council.
Welcome to the future of shopping with Real Value IGA mobile app. Now, your favorite supermarket is right in your pocket. Whether you're a student, a busy parent, or in the diaspora shopping for friends and family at home, a Yachty or a Grenadian, our mobile app has you covered. Shop online with our mobile app from anywhere and enjoy free delivery to St. George and St. David. Or you can pick up your groceries in-store, hassle-free. Convenience, savings, and a seamless experience in Grenada. All right here at your fingertips. Download the Real Value IGA mobile app and start shopping today. Real Value IGA, bringing the supermarket to you.
This song is dedicated to all heroes and patriots who fall.
nation rises one more time to remember and honor our martyrs and our heroes. This proud nation, nurtured by their blood and sweat, comes together for another Heroes Day on Saturday, October 19th, with a special ceremony at Progress Park from 9:30 a.m. Citations and prayers, as well as cultural presentations and speeches by many, including 2 Prime Ministers. Our Prime Minister, Deacon Mitchell, and St. Vincent and the Grenadines Prime Minister, Dr. Ralph Gonsalves. Cultural presentations by the National Folk Group, Vinway, Wizard, Scholar, Nicole Newton Fletcher, and more. It's going to be both solemn and commemorative, and we will come together and call our heroes by their names on Heroes Day, Saturday, October 19th at Progress Park, starting at 9:30 a.m.
Welcome back, viewers. I'm here with host Byron Campbell, of course, Chris. Chris, this week, staying on education, but from a different dimension, Chris, Tamsisi, there were an unfortunate incident this week. You had students fighting. There's some violence there. I mean, very unfortunate, though. But how do we control this? How do we avoid this?
You know, Tamsisi's Act gives them a lot of authority to deal with their students, which is sometimes a little outside of the Education Act.
Yeah.
I remember years ago when I was serving on the board down there, we had an incident with gangs, and gangs squaring up to fight and so on. And eventually a lot of these students who were identified were expelled.
Yeah.
And of course there was this backward and forward about throwing out people and they didn't have a chance for education. But these guys wasn't there for education. They were there to carry on their gangish ways and disrupt the entire population of the school. This one here seems to be an issue of conflict management and not understanding that if 2 young men have an issue, they had a square off based on the information and went home, armed themselves and came back.
Whoa.
To deal with each other.
This is bad.
Yeah, and now Tamsisi is putting in thing of searching bags and searching and doing a lot of that. So it's after the fact we're seeing that this is happening, but this is not something new in the environment to these young men and young women coming from secondary schools where that is a norm to some degree. So I believe, I'm not articulating we should expel the young men, but we should bring into the school, if they're not willing to adjust their ways and pay for what they did, at the end of the day, we need to have conflict management as a topic, as a major thing to discuss with these young people, so that they understand that the only way, I should say the only way, the way not to deal with it is to get violent. You could settle disputes, settle conflict without getting violent and damaging and maiming each other.
It's very important, yeah. And the effect it has on other students.
Exactly.
Also,
through the environment of the school.
Through the environment of the school.
And we have a new principal down there, so probably he has an opportunity to put in some things now to deal with the situation and don't have it escalate.
Very unfortunate. Chris, today there was a press conference. It was a major one. It was over 2 hours. Prime Minister, Minister of Agriculture, and others, among others. But one of the things that they were discussing, and I will go into this in a little details, is projects, But one that was not mentioned at all was in fact the project at the international airport. And this was a significant project. We know that the airport, this project envisaged to place another runway or a taxiway, however you want to call it, new ramps, new by roads. It was going to significantly, and it was being financed by the Chinese Development Bank, I think, one of these banks. I'm not sure where it's at. I'm certainly not hearing or seeing much movement there. Where is the Chinese? Because there was a huge contingent of Chinese construction workers that were here. Are they still here? What do you know about this project? What's happening?
You know, recently I was traveling and I went upstairs to look at what we call, call it loosely the fingers that comes out and meets international aircraft. And you walk off through these tubular things and you come into the airport. But when I went there and you looked at these things have been installed, and when you look at the levels, it doesn't come up to the level at the top floor. So they have to do some serious adjustments to the levels and to get it to come in there. So that is one. So you wonder about the planning, and then when they egress the aircraft, you would probably have passengers egressing and getting ready to board in the same terminal section without much separation. That could be a security concern. And then immigration is downstairs, so you'll have to have some escalator type activity to bring the people who comes on the island to go through immigration and what is happening there.
Yeah.
I'm saying that this project envisage, as you say, upgrades to the tarmac, upgrade, and then they were supposed to put in a taxi runway parallel to the existing runway. It has not been done. And these fingers are not operational. It doesn't look as though they'll be operational anytime soon based on all the adjustments that have to be made internally. And what has been done is a bypass road around the airport.
Yeah.
For security reasons, obviously, an international airport has to be secured, as we see in international countries, how they do it. So that's perfect. And I think they upgraded the tower that deals with the air traffic controllers. But outside of that, the Chinese seem to have disappeared. Where they had set up shop, with the asphalt plant and everything to do work on the runway and so on, they're no longer there. You're not seeing them, you're not seeing their trucks, you're not seeing anything. I don't know if they're on another project in Grenada, but we're not hearing anything from the airport authority. You're not hearing anything from Minister of Aviation and what is going on with the project. And I know that you said they spoke about projects.
Yeah, so let's go there a bit. So this press conference, I mean, what have gathered there, you know, and there were some questions raised during the press conference. And it was interesting, the Prime Minister, as the Minister of Works, you know, was very clear. He indicated that the Molinier project will be open in November. He made this emphatically clear, you know, will be open. So that's good news, particularly for the villagers among Morris, you know, and motorists. And motorists. So because this is important. He did mention, however, that there's up and down slopes that need stabilization, you know, but he indicated that that does not interfere with the but he went on to talk about other projects. The Woburn Cliff, he indicated that this is going to go on to 2025. This is not going to, and talk about like the H.A. Blaze Street, for example, mentioned that it was contracted, but there were issues of supplies, material, aggregates, and other supplies. And in this particular one, there was no timeline given for this. So this is really kind of up in the air. The Fort George project, he thinks that sometime next year, by the first or second quarter, this would be, because the police headquarters has to be relocated. The work on the Carenage is going as planned for the relocation, talked about that. But projects on the whole, because you would recall, Chris, that one of the recent, earlier this year when the World Bank visited Grenada, part of their report indicated they drew reference to projects and project implementation in particular, and talking about the need for oversight in some of these projects. And capacity, you know, I'm worried, Chris, that we don't have the capacity to do what we want to do. Because you have to bring in Carrico. Carrico is going to draw some capacity for now with the whole rebuilding, reconstruction that's taking place there. So how do we do all these other projects, quote unquote? He also talked about what's coming, Western Main Road, Mabuya, as one that will be addressed, and somewhere in the Grand Anse Valley to improve the roads, their sidewalks, because of the high amount of pedestrians in that area. So, but one of the things that concern me, Chris, you know, this is the Prime Minister's portfolio, works, construction. That's a huge portfolio in any country. The Prime Minister has several other portfolios to his name, including what? Help me, Chris.
Security, information, NADMA, disaster relief. And many others.
And many others.
Works and many others.
You're the Prime Minister. We expect you to be traveling a lot. Maybe some argue that it's too much, but travel is important. Foreign affairs, although you have a foreign affairs minister, but as a Prime Minister, you represent at the highest level. The question I ask is, Does he have the capacity, the way to adequately manage such a portfolio, given his other areas of responsibility? Because you recall he moved from finance portfolio and assumed this role. I'm unsure, in other words, how the structure is operating, because at the same time you have MIT. What is the role of MIT? How does MIT integrate with all the other ministries and projects? Chris, from a structural point of view, I'm not sure. I've not seen it. Nobody have explained it how it works. But I am uncertain that this is an adequate and professional solution towards project implementation, based on my knowledge, professional knowledge on projects.
Well, I will start here. I will start here with the projects part, and then get to the Prime Minister's multitude of portfolios.
Yeah.
And how efficient that may work.
Yeah.
Remember, we just had a supplemental done.
Yes, 250 million. Yeah.
And we could probably say of that supplemental, 70% was for capital works.
Yes.
And even when it was done and passed in Parliament, there was reservations that you could take 70% of 200 million, which is 140 million, and have it completed before end of the year. And you have budgets coming up. So that is the first point I want to make.
Yeah.
Because this government have been heavily criticized in terms of its ability to implement projects and complete projects.
Mm-hmm.
They met the Molyneux project when they came into office.
Yeah.
They made some adjustments, yes, they made some changes, and of course, it's going to happen in November, as they say. The Toby Road, Woodlands have been going on for quite a while, and you hear all kind of things about, the Prime Minister came back and said they needed to do re-evaluation of structures and walls and so on. And you hear that people who live on the bottom side of the road, they haven't come to full agreement what will happen to them when they start the works. So I say all of these things, let me see what is happening with the projects. I cannot understand how you could have the Green Street, Herbert Blaze Road, when it fell off and it collapsed to the bottom.
Yeah.
You knew the extent of the project in terms of the height, the gravel, the backfill, whatever needed to be done when you erect the wall. I cannot understand how we could come now and say that there is an aggregate or there isn't a backfill for the project, and the road has to be diverted to this narrow thing in Green Street there. And that, to me, these...
Chris, can I pause you here?
Yeah.
You say the narrow road in Green Street. So let me tell you, today, I'm on Melville Street in the city, and I want to go on the Carnage. I want to go by Rennick and Thompson to get some agricultural supply. How do I get to Rennick and Thompson from Melville Street?
You have to go through Green Street, and when you come down one of the hills...
No. They changed it now. The one of the hill you're talking about, that's closed now.
No. There's another one.
Yeah, so that's the one you have to take. The first one is closed.
You could go left or right.
No, you could only go left.
No.
No, today.
No. You had two arrows.
No, but you're not listening to me. What I had to do, the arrows going to your right are closed off.
Well, I went down there today and the arrow was
This
back up.
afternoon. So to get to the Carnage,
I
had to go to Tantine and turn around and come back.
Yeah, and
I lost 20 minutes. 20 minutes. So continue, Chris.
Yeah, no,
I just want to make it very clear.
I hear the Prime Minister when he talks as Minister of Works, that the projects will have some snags.
Yeah.
And that is normal in projects.
Yeah.
You'll have snags, you'll have issues that will come up. But when these snags come up, as engineers, and when you go to assess a project, you have to prepare for the snags.
Yeah.
And if the snag come up, how are you going to solve it quickly? Because remember, these are national projects that are affecting us nationally. Molyneux is a big one, and so on, and what has to be done in the interim to bypass traffic. And then on top of that, there is no traffic police around to assist when you do the bypass of the things. And you have to take different roads, and the police are totally absent on these traffic issues. So it makes the pedestrian and the motorist life far more difficult when these things happen. And I was always saying, Byron, in a country like ours, where we have one of the best network of roads, that works to our advantage and disadvantage. Because the government has to spend millions every year to deal with slides and degradation of roads.
It's an expensive operation.
And then add to that now, we have these huge SL trucks that on the road carrying I don't know how much wheelbase and
Yeah,
so on.
yeah,
And the tonnage
Yeah.
they're putting on the road, our roads weren't designed for it. But here we are, allowing these big trucks to come in,
Yeah.
understanding the axle
Yeah.
thing that they
Yeah.
have. I can't
Yeah.
remember the
Yeah.
terminology.
Yeah.
But the point is, they're putting the kind of tonnage on our roads that they're squeezing
Yeah.
the roads.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the roads are deteriorating. So the cart before the horse. You know, why allow trucks of that tonnage when you know your road can't take it?
Can't
And then
take
we
it.
have a ministry of what?
Which one?
The one that transport and so on, that seems to be almost non-existent because they're not dealing with anything that seem to be addressing the issue.
I mean, the Transport Commission. So
Transport
we're not
Commission.
we're not hearing about them. And when you drive by the bus terminal in late evening, there's a lot of people there waiting for transport, and people are begging for rides. And so the absence of regulations
Yeah, because
is
the bus owners, the president of the bus owners association in Grenville,
yeah,
St. Andrews, talking about they're trying to deal with this situation.
yeah,
But his thing was that they start at 4 o'clock in the morning, and they get tired and so on.
Mhm.
But again, you have to ask yourself, when are we going to understand that a public transport system have to run alongside the private?
yeah,
And when are we going to understand that transport is such a critical aspect of our economic development as a country
Mhm.
that it cannot be ignored? That is something that we have to take a bull by the
Mhm.
horns and deal with it. Or you're going to have people coming from work in St. George's
Mhm.
and waiting till 8 o'clock in the night to possibly get transport to go back home. And when you reach Grenville, you might have to take another bus to go to other places where you live in, either Sutton or Munich or somewhere. I mean, come on.
something else. Chris, going back to that same press conference, it was important. One dimension of it was the government used that occasion to inform the nations or launch, clearly the public sector reform, pension in particular. And basically what emerged there is the government is saying, look, they've launched it, and maybe we could go into detail, time permitting. And in addition to that, an integrated performance system was also discussed, talking about key results area, competencies, personal development plans, so forth. But going back to the pension, I mean, essentially what they're saying, there's 3,600 non-established workers, which, they're targeting those, and the pension would involve a contributory system, 3%. But in all of this, the union have not been involved. The government is saying that they were invited. The union is saying they weren't. The union is saying things are being dictated to them. I'm quoting the president, by the way, of the Public Workers Union. So it's interesting to see how the parties come together to resolve this. I think it's important that they talk. It's important. But if the government is adamant and going ahead with this policy without giving the union an opportunity to give their input, where are we heading?
Well,
what are the problems?
What I know of this in the earlies,
Yeah.
when the committee was established to discuss the pension thing,
Yeah.
pension reform, the government invited the Trade Union Council
Yeah.
as a representative.
Yeah.
The Trade Union Council represents all the unions in Grenada.
Yeah.
Now, the TUC could have decided who they wanted to represent. PWU president was saying that his union wasn't invited, and he felt because they represent such a large scope of government workers, they should be the one. No, the government don't have to make that decision for you. The government could say, here is the invitation to TUC. TUC, you discuss it, and if you feel PWU is the best representative, let them send a representative to discuss the issues. So I don't buy this argument that Labour wasn't invited. Labour was invited, probably the unions wasn't happy how it was done.
No, the Public Workers Union was not invited.
Right.
That's
and,
the point.
And you have an umbrella body that
Yeah.
represents.
Yeah.
So if they had a problem, bring it to the umbrella body and say this and discuss it internally.
Yeah.
So that's one. The second thing we need to understand, government needs to get this done and get this going because of the cost involved. Remember, pension funds need to be funded. It needs to be funded in order for it to pay out properly. And if it's not funded, anything could happen, and one day you wake up and the government in a cash crisis or some crisis, and you can't get paid as a pensioner if it's unfunded. So having a contributory scheme makes it, you contribute, the government contribute, they match it, and they take the funds in that and they invest it in various instruments. And over time, as you get to approach the age of retirement, you have funds that is almost assured will come.
But this does not affect in any way existing public workers, you know.
No, I know that. That's another problem that to deal with. This isn't ones that are unestablished are not coming on the established system. Those that are established is another, because remember, you know, Byron, established workers in the public have 100% funded pension arrangement. They don't pay anything towards it. Right? And when you reach 26 and 2/3 years, you get a gratuity payment, and then you take the rest. And with NIS, you get this pension, which is sometimes 100% of your last salary or 80%. I know of a particular statutory body that has that similar arrangement. And at the end of the day, some of them get with NIS, with their pension and NIS, more than what they were paying, they were working for.
Serious.
And no pension arrangement gives you more than 55% of your last salary. Right? And you have to make the adjustments and so on. And even though you have a private one, it still wouldn't come up to 100. So I'm saying that to say, we have untenable pension arrangements in Grenada, unfunded, by the way, and workers don't understand the risk. And then when you go to labor and you present a contributory pension arrangement, 3% or 5%, the workers come back and say, but there is a cost. I'm losing 3% of my salary. I need to get an increase to offset that.
They don't see it as an investment.
No.
And that was explained, I think, by the Prime Minister today. He explained that because one of the questions coming from a journalist was that, is it a loss to the worker? You know, clearly it's not a loss. Because it's been matched. You're coming from a situation where there was none. But bottom line is, I would like to see the workers and the government coming together on this, because it's very important. I mean, this type of tug of war is not healthy.
Let me say this.
Well, that's the nature of labor, maybe? I don't know.
Well, a lot of education have to be done by the labor movement. And the employer, of course, have to present their case in a way that workers understand what is going to happen. And as I say, it's not a cost, it's an investment in your future. It's quite similar to if you take the 3% from your salary and put it in our savings account and getting 2% interest. You have access to it after a certain time. The credit unions have these savings plans. It's similar with a pension arrangement. So I'm not understanding the workers thinking about this.
The other interesting part of it, Chris, is that this scheme will be managed by an independent body. And they're not reporting to the cabinet on this. They're reporting to the Governor General, to the Parliament. So it is independent. Chris, it's October 19th is Saturday. We have, of course, October 19th. The relevance of importance of October 19th is that when we had a massacre, when we had killings of Morris Bishop, civilians and others at the fort. But we'll come back to that, Chris. But what's interesting is that the 19th has been declared Heroes Day, National Heroes Day. That's fine, Chris. But if we have a day set aside for National Heroes Day, I ask, who are the heroes? Well, that's not been determined yet. So are we putting the cart before the horse in that? I'm a bit confused, Chris, so maybe you could explain that to me. But before you do that, Chris, the Martyrs Foundation, headed by Dr. Marichaud, they indicated they were not going to St. Andrews for the National Heroes Day celebration. They wanted to do their usual with the families at the fort where the executions, where the killing actually took place, So there's a bit of a disconnect there. Anyway, but back to this, Chris. I support a National Heroes Day, but in the absence of us going through the process or processes to determine who our heroes are, how you could have a Heroes Day? I mean, I don't know. You tell me.
The situation of the Heroes Day is a good concept.
Yes.
Putting it as that state.
Okay.
Because it seems to be conceptual and not more for the time being.
Yeah.
Celebrating our heroes, not necessarily from a revolution standpoint and what took place on the fort.
No.
Is, to me, it gives the connection that is the heroes that we want to celebrate.
Right.
The deaths of Morris and Jacqueline and all of them and how it happened and the executions. That is a sad time in our history. And it should be recognized as such and recorded as such. Because passion around that exists with you and I in our age group. Young people in their 30s and probably the early 40s have no
40s.
passion about this and what happened in the revolution. So I say that to say that unless the Heroes Day thing is extended, which I think that was the intention, you have national awards, the highest medal of honor, and those type of things. The Heroes Day is projected in that sort of text, context, and frame. But I understand that there's no committee in place to look at how they do this Heroes Day, criteria for choosing the heroes, what it is we are awarding them with in terms of a prize, a medal, or what, and the law that has to be put in place, run through Parliament to ensure that this is not a fly-by-night thing and it is established in our culture and our laws that we have to celebrate our people and to designate them heroes as a highest award of the country because of their contribution in whatever field. And you don't get a sense that this is being taken in a logical, structured way to implement and get Grenadians to buy in. Because, they floated the ideas, they want everybody to partake and appoint people and consider it and committee look at it. And
hasn't happened.
Nothing has happened.
I like the idea of the park also next to Camahan being designated. And it's interesting, I've not heard what's happening there. But I like that concept also.
But the Caribbean roundabout costs us 100,000.
100,000?
Yeah, I don't know how much.
But as you talk about that, but I want to come back to that anyway. but that's a lot of money. But we have a lot of money now, Chris. You don't have to worry about money. Don't worry about funds. Yes, part of the Heroes Day celebration, it was announced that there would be there's a ban on amplified music. Amplified music?
Yeah.
But listen to it. I've been picking up this that Wagati, for example, he has this big event of football. You have Jamaican artists, and he would have set that day for the launching. That's what I understand. And so if you ban loud music, if you ban amplified music, then guess what? He can't. So my information is that the event has been had to be postponed. And there's people are not happy about this.
Again, it's a level of disorganization.
Yeah.
Wagiti will have to apply to the authorities to get permission to hold his event and play music of a certain time.
Yeah.
So the fact that he would have been given permission by the authorities, and then the authorities is now saying that amplified music is not allowed on the day. The right hand don't know whether they find it. That's why he should have paid.
Allegedly, that is,
I just
that's
saying
the
because there's
information.
a process to get these shows and get permission to do these
Absolutely,
shows.
absolutely,
So I say that for what it's worth, but again, the disconnect between the Martyrs Foundation and what is happening, again, why should we have a disconnect? The Martyrs Foundation should be part of the Heroes because of the nature of how we announce Heroes Days to celebrate the deaths of these people and the lives of these people that lost their, when they lost their life on the fort. So, I mean, I know personalities just get involved in these things and probably they were invited and they objected and they went back and forth. But at the end of the day, it would be nice to, because for us, the 19th is a very solemn day because of what happened with the loss of lives. And as I say, you and I may have passion about it, but that doesn't exist.
I have.
Right. And that don't exist with our younger people.
No.
So, you have to understand how the culture and the thing will change over time. And when we die out, that probably will die. The passions and the feelings.
You were alive on 19th, you were around 1983? You were?
Yeah.
I'll come back to that, Chris.
I was in town when the execution took place.
You were?
Yeah. It was one of the most eerie things that ever happened.
Yeah.
The shots were going off and the whole place went in dead silence. Dead silence. After all the workers on the fort and Black and Vote. And
I was on the fort, Chris.
Yes. And
I was on the fort.
When the execution happened about an hour, 2 hours after they settled the fort.
Yeah.
And then you heard these very eerie one-off shots, bow, and
Yeah, it brings in a lot of emotions. But I think more of us, Chris, should be talking about that experience and that history, because it's important. You know, we shouldn't die with all this knowledge in our head, whether we write about it or find occasion to speak about it. But that's going to come in another time, Chris, not tonight. Viewers, stay with us. We'll be right back with you.
All of Grenada is invited to be a part of the National Heroes Day commemoration on Saturday, October 19th, 2024 at Progress Park in St. Andrew from 9:30 a.m. to 12 midday. National Heroes Day will be commemorated under the theme Unity in commemorating our heroes, past, present, and future. Speakers at the National Heroes Day commemoration will include the Honorable Deacon Mitchell, Prime Minister of Grenada, and the Honorable Ralph Gonzalez, Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. An exciting and entertaining cultural package will form part of the celebrations. Organize your groups now and let's make this a most memorable event in recognition of the sacrifices and achievements of our national heroes. Free transportation will be provided. National Heroes Day Commemoration 2024, Saturday, October 19th, Progress Park in St. Andrew.
Grenada, you're invited to join the Ministry of Agriculture and Lands, Forestry and Marine Resources in celebrating World Food Day 2024. This year's theme will focus on Right to Foods for a better life and a better future. Activities include panel discussion October 16th at the National Stadium from 10 a.m. Then, turn out in your numbers as we call on community groups, agro-processors, farmers, schools, and householders. Yes, one and all. Join us at the Victoria Park in Grenville on October 18th for the grandest annual agricultural exhibition, Right to Foods for a better life and a better future. The 2024 World Food Day celebrations, enhancing Grenada's food security.
Welcome back, viewers, to MTV Community Forum. I'm your host, Byron Campbell, and of course, my colleague, co-host, Chris Diali. Chris, welcome back. Viewers, welcome back.
I'm happy to be back.
Look, I heard the Minister of Health earlier this week, or late last week. Earlier this week it was, yeah. In an interview, I think it was Right Along, you know. And he was saying that every call he receives is an emergency. In other words, he gave the impression that the hospital is operating in an emergency situation. All is not right. There is extreme shortage of staff. He's trying to get retired nurses to get back to work. Supplies issues. I don't want to say it's scary, but you don't want to get sick, Chris, you know.
No, well, let me just say this. We have always had a debate about the hospital and the function and its efficiency and its effectiveness.
Yeah.
That is nothing new. The last government before this, this government, it has always been a sore point until we want to build a new hospital where the Kariri lands is and no proper land development. One of the most fertile areas we want to take and put on the structure.
And that's because we have no land use policy. Right. So no put everything anywhere. Yeah.
So let's get back to the hospital. Because the hospital has a number of issues, and you could start with management, the systems, the controls. You could talk about that. You could talk about supplies, medical supplies. We have an arrangement in the OECS where we all buy in bulk
collectively,
and we share and so on. And you'll have reports coming back that we supply the hospital $1 million, $2 million worth of medical supplies, and within a month and a half.
And we haven't paid our bills.
Yeah, it disappeared.
Yeah.
So it leaves question about the controls, the people in the system and what they're doing.
Yeah.
So here's the minister I hear trying to say he's using the expertise among Sinai a hospital in the US
Yeah.
to come in and consult, and the idea they're thinking about statutorization,
Yeah.
I have absolutely no problem with that, from the point of view that if it's run as a statutory organization and have an independent board handling, and they will have performance indicators in order to give some level of health and assurance of health that this organization had to be run a certain way. The cost for certain things will have to change, unfortunately, because you go in the lab for a particular blood test that the doctors may recommend, and you have to do a number of tests. The lab will tell you the cost for doing that is probably $100, let's see. And then when you go in a private area, they tell you the cost is $200, right? So the government is subsidizing that significantly, but what happens? When you go back and next time for the test, they don't have reagents. They run out of supplies.
Yeah.
So obviously, the charge structure and the fee structure, you have x-rays that don't work. You have that work and they break down. They have to fly in a technician. We don't have a proper preventative maintenance for the sophisticated equipment you have to have for health. So statutorization could be one of the answers if you have a Mount Sinai type operation. That is basically a private enterprise.
Yeah.
You cannot run a medical facility to a certain standard and offer certain types of basic service and not have to pay.
Chris, I hear you. My concern would be the country we live in. We have a high poverty rate. It's what, 35% of our
Based on the
population?
census, I didn't touch on it,
Yeah.
but it's probably less than that.
Less than that now, so it's going down. That's good, but it's high relative, yeah, in terms of affordability. So in that respect, I'd like to see some action, some movement with the health insurance scheme that was talked about. We've already spent money on it already. So let's see how it goes. What the Prime Minister also said about this in the press conference today is that there will be consultation, broad consultation with the public on the matter. So,
in most systems, Byron, before we end it,
let's see.
Emergency care is never refused to anybody, regardless of your income bracket.
Right, yeah.
But after you stabilize a patient from emergency, and you move them into the general administration part of the hospital in the different wards and so on, for a period of time, then you have to find a way to pay something.
Yes, there's a cost.
And even though it's a subsidized cost to what it is, but if you have to go into an ICU unit in Grenada, first of all, to have an ICU unit is an expensive thing.
Operations, of course.
And you can't go in an ICU unit and expect to pay $50 for the use of the ICU unit. Come on. Because it is keeping you alive, it is protecting a lot of the things that you're doing. So you must have, we as Grenadians, I'm not talking about the very vulnerable and the very poor, we'll find money. We have GoFundMe things, they have buses driving around asking for assistance. You have things, let us come into the private sector. We find a way to pay for what we have to do.
But it shouldn't be dependent on that, Chris. I think,
But we cannot.
Health is a right.
You cannot.
It's a
look
right.
Look at the US. Look at Canada. Look at England. They have national health schemes. They are not working properly. So if we were to use those models to try and look at 2x4 country like ours, we ain't gonna make sense. We're gonna be still in the position we did. So it'll be interesting to see what
comes out there. Chris, October 7th, 1 year. And of course, when I talk of 7th, I'm talking about the Israeli-Palestinian issue. You could call it a conflict, whatever. But in a year, in fact, today the United Security Council was meeting on this issue again. I mean, country after country continues to spell out the horror, the genocide, the displacement, the murders, the killings, the starvation that is taking place in this region. Not only that aspect of it, but I mean, Israel has now extended the war to Lebanon and possibly to Iran. One has to also look at the role of the United States. Does the United States, with its armaments industry, benefit from this war? Of course, this is the industry that's been supplying all the armaments to Israel. Been supplying the armaments to Israel. This is a war is at least two dimensions. There's intelligence here, but there's also defense and offense. America is big in the defense in Israel. I mean, there's no troops there, you know. But the numbers, Chris, you know, you're looking at 42,400 killed. Among that, you have 16,765 children.
That ain't shocking nobody anymore.
99,000, 100,000 injured, you know, missing 10,000. And this figures is coming from the Ministry of Health.
In our world today, where we call ourselves advanced nations, it is about money and not about lives. Because if that was the case, the U.S. is the biggest supplier now of military hardware to Israel.
Yes,
through missiles,
by
tanks,
far.
missile systems and so on. Here it is England, France, and some of the countries in Europe are saying that they can no longer support what is going on, especially where Israel wants to extend this war in that area to rope in Iran and rope in, well, Lebanon and Syria are already in the play. You have Egypt there on the border too that may be roped in indirectly because they had to understand. And then when you look at who is supporting Iran with their armaments, it is the USSR.
The USSR,
right?
Closely.
So this war, if it extends, is going to involve superpowers in some
Not
degree.
if. It's a question of when, Chris.
Yeah,
and mind you, there are implications for us here, you know, because that affects trade. It affects commerce. It affects supply chain. All these things get... So we shouldn't pretend that this is happening somewhere else and it's not going to... But how... You know, Chris, and I saw today, you know, countries after country, they talk about half of Gaza home being destroyed, 80% of commercial facilities, 90% of school buildings, all the healthcare facilities, the road network, cropland. And the starvation now, and the U.S. has come out now and said, look, Israel, we're giving you a month. We're giving you 30 days to fix things, you know, make sure people get food. That the supplies, the aid comes. You know, really? You got a month? People are starving now. Well, you die in a month. You're not going to survive in a month. But why? The question is, though, the U.S. has the way with it to influence Israel, but then and to stop the war. But instead, it seems that they're using Israel as a proxy.
Why do you think they give him 30 days?
The election.
Exactly. It's a timing issue. Right? They give them 30 days because the U.S. election would have been held by that time.
Yes.
And you will know who is the next president of the United States.
Yes.
And that will determine how it goes.
Yeah.
So is either Israel get more power from the U.S. to do what they're doing if a new president comes, or no?
You think Israel is going to wait their strike on Iran, which they say is going to happen? You think it's going to happen before the election or after the election?
Well, it depends on what Mr. Netanyahu feels his political power in the country is at that point in time. If he strikes now, whether his hardline right-wing party will support and so on, and how politically that will play out. So there's a lot of dynamics going on there. But at the end of the day, you know, innocent lives will be lost and lost forever. And the ideology of Hamas, and the ideology of the one in Syria, I forget the name now, would not change. They would not change these people and what they feel about Israel. And everybody in the world who have some sense says the only way you can get peace is a two-state agreement. The two peoples have to live together alongside each other.
Because the war that's happening is not going to result in peace.
No, and
it's not.
Both places, Iran have said as far as they're concerned, Israel must be wiped off the map. And Israel have said as far as they are concerned, Palestine and Hamas and all of them have to be wiped off the map.
So we're not looking at a favorable situation at all. But in the meantime, Chris, you know, to live through what's taking place in Palestine, it just hurt. But it tells you that the UN is of no effect. And
no teeth.
But you know what was interesting? That I was looking at some historical matters, and I was looking at the invasion of Grenada on the 25th October 1983. Of course, this invasion was led by the United States. But I wanted to know what was the UN position then. And it was interesting. The United Nations met on the matter on the 2nd of November 1983 and said it was a blatant violation of international law, the U.S. invasion of Grenada at the time. And they went further to say that they used the emotions of the Grenadian people with the execution of their leader, their dear leader, Morris, because that affected everybody. You were hurt.
That was the excuse.
You wanted, I mean, it was a dislocation, it was a hurt, and they used the massacre on the fort as the excuse
with Eugenia
Charles to invade Grenada. So the UN position was very clear. But again, and the interesting other things I found out was Margaret Thatcher, the Prime Minister of England at the time, was opposed to Reagan. One, because he didn't tell her, just carried it out.
And there's security members of the UN that talking there.
But But we could talk more about that. But it's interesting that the invasion itself, because you had a multiple of U.S. forces, departments integrated, and it was a disaster in coordination and communication.
Well,
that the U.S. So the U.S. after that fundamentally changed the structure of the armed forces in military conflict as a result of the experience in Grenada. It was interesting to look at this history of this, Anyway, Chris, enough about that. But
I think we've got to leave politics for another time.
Politics. There's a lot happening in politics. So, Chris, we have to go to politics next week. But of course, the leader of the opposition continues to
change his position. Flip-flop it, if you want to put that way. Start off a year ago saying that, when he did his thing as the leader of the opposition, newly appointed, he said it's 1 year.
Yeah.
It's 3 years now, you can't have a convention.
Sure.
You had a general council where proponents of the party would have set the date for the convention.
Yeah.
No date was announced. Yeah. And then you're hearing all these other chatter about
but the big
he is going to appoint who he believes is
he changed it now. He says he's going to recommend.
Yeah.
But the big thing was but the big thing now is he says on the question of Peter, it was a question of trust. He said it's a work in progress, but we'll talk about that next week. Viewers, that's all the time we have. We have to cut away. We want to recognize our technical staff and MTV management. See you next week, same time, same place.
Could we talk about Lacaloma and the sewer issue next week?
Next week also. So we have a lot to talk about. Stay with us. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.